So guys, Tristan's gone ahead and done an interview with his good friend Rory. We've linked Rory's channels down below in the description, so if you could go ahead and subscribe, he's going to be releasing more exclusive content very soon. If you want to join the real world, we have a link in the description.
Good evening and welcome to episode 3 of the Saints and Sinners podcast. Now today is a very special interview for me because I didn't think I'd be able to get someone huge on such a small platform as we've only just recently started our channel. However, if you like what you see, we'd like you to like and subscribe today. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my guest, Tristan Tate.
How did you manage to get such a big name on your interview, Rory? I mean, I don't understand. You've just started on Rumble. Your channel's relatively small. How did you manage to get such a big name on your podcast? I'm impressed.
I don't know. I mean, it took a lot of convincing, but I mean, we're here now, so we're going to get it going. I've wanted to do this interview for a little while now, and I think I've got some good questions today. Some questions that people would like answers to.
Well, you are in a very unique position. And for those of you who don't know at home, the reason he got me on this interview is because I've known him since he was 18 and he's currently at my house. So I thought, why not? And he is actually in a very unique position because he could probably get away with asking me things that most people wouldn't and most people would be scared to ask. So I don't know what the questions he's going to ask me are, but I'm very interested in what you've got to say.
Do you know what? I think the title of this interview will be called The Life of Tristan Tate because we're going to go over a few subjects of, your upbringing, where you started and everything else.
Yep.
And then we're going to later move on to the more modern sort of stuff.
Okay.
So, cool.
Ready.
Without further ado, let's go.
Ready when you are.
Okay, so let's start from your childhood and your family life growing up in America, because obviously I didn't know you then, So, first off, your mum was originally from Luton, right?
Yeah, so my parents actually met at an Air Force base near Luton called Chicksands, where American Air Forcemen and soldiers would go out and have a bit of a party, and there were some local English girls around, and my dad, obviously being the big, black, strong, handsome man he was, saw that little pretty white English girl at Chicksands and managed to promote 12 years of marriage and 3 kids out of her. So well done to him. But yeah, I was born in the United States.
See, that's very interesting because Chicksands is actually very local to Luton anyway.
Yeah.
I think it's about 15-minute drive away.
Absolutely.
So Eileen met Emery at Chicksands, and from there, she obviously fell head over heels in love with Emery. And then I'm guessing Emery moved Eileen to the States, is that right?
Absolutely. I was born in Washington, D.C., Walter Reed Medical Center. I believe that's the same hospital that presidents go to. So I was born in the Walter Reed Medical Center, but I don't remember any of Washington, D.C.
Okay, so obviously you were very young at the time. So where was your first school? So I thought you were from Illinois.
No. So the reason me and Andrew say Chicago is because nobody knows where anything is in the United States. People know New York, California, Miami. So if I'm in Turkey and people say, where in England are you from? I say London. Because
Right.
Luton's close.
Of course.
So I'm not even from Illinois at all. I grew up in a state called Indiana, which is the state next to Illinois. So I lived in a very small town called Goshen. Now I had a grandfather in Chicago. Chicago is a good 5-6 hours drive away from where I am. But if you're trying to make somebody imagine in America where I lived, I just say, Chicago, the Chicago area. Dad grew up near Chicago. It's just an easier explanation to the foreigners. But yeah, I grew up in Indiana.
Okay, so let's talk a bit more about your upbringing in America. So did you have a nice family home? Did you live in a nice area? Did you go to a nice school?
No, not really. So, I mean, the situation with my father, me and Andrew never really go into it. But essentially, he was a successful man up until I was about 2 years old. So I don't remember ever having any money or anything good.
Right.
So he used to travel around playing chess. He fought with the military for a decade trying to get his old job back, which ultimately failed. He never did get his job back with the military. He never got any back pay. He never got financial compensation or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I always remember being poor, even when I was living in America, because my first memories of going to other people's houses, I'm like, I live in a bedroom with my brother and my sister. We have one room that we all share. That was the kids' room. You've got your own bedroom. Stuff like that was mind-blowing to me at age 4 or 5. I mean,
and your school there? Your school was it a good school?
You know what's funny? I now realize that I'm famous enough that when I start saying the names of schools and stuff, people might contact me from the past. Or
Okay.
the same school. I went to Chandler Elementary School in Goshen, Indiana. That was my first ever school.
See, I knew this. I knew that was Goshen, Indiana. That's right. So let's talk about your sibling relationships growing up. Obviously, I know you're very close to Andrew. You always have been as long as I've known you guys. Then there's Janine as well. So were you guys close growing up?
I feel like sibling rivalry, boys fighting and arguing is a very normal part of growing up. You know, we used to punch each other, that kind of thing.
Of course, yeah.
You've got brothers yourself.
Yeah.
I think our superpower was as we came into adulthood and realized how alone we were on Earth, like, or in the world, that we transformed that kind of rivalry or any jealousy or anything we had for each other into teamwork.
Into a partnership,
Yeah,
right?
but you don't think that way at 8 or 9 years of age. If you've got an older brother who steals your stuff, you try to punch him. And
Of course.
He punches you back hard.
I think that's a common trait across every sibling, relationship in the world. But, let's talk about chess. When did you start playing chess? Because I've seen articles on Andrew winning chess competitions from when he was 5 years old. When did your dad get you boys to start playing chess? And
So what's interesting now is I'm going to start teaching my daughter chess now, and she can't even speak properly. The reason being, I don't remember ever not knowing how chess pieces moved. So I don't know how old I was when he taught me, but I never have that memory of sitting down saying, how does this piece move? How does this piece move? My earliest recollections of chess, maybe I was 3.5, my earliest recollections of sitting at the board, I knew how the pieces moved already.
so for as long as you can remember, you've naturally known where all the pieces move.
There's not a single point in my life when I can remember not knowing how to play chess or learning how to play chess.
That's insane.
I remember studying chess, but actually learning the rules of the game, how to set them up, it feels like I've always known it. So he must have taught me before I could speak.
Crazy. So you went to school, Chandler Elementary or whatever the school was called.
Yeah.
And then after this, your mum and dad had a breakup. They broke up. What age were you then?
Jesus, I was about 7.5, 8. And
Yeah.
the reasons for the breakup weren't so much the marriage being on the rocks. I believe the reason for the breakup, as it is most marriages and most breakups, was financial. You have to understand, in America, if you're broke, you can't go to the hospital. There's no health care if you're broke.
It's not like the NHS in England where you can do whatever you like and just go to the hospital, call an ambulance at whatever hour of the day you want, and it's free.
Yeah, I know.
So you get charged thousands of pounds for an ambulance in America.
Yeah, no, thousands, tens of thousands sometimes. So I think the main discussion of my parents' divorce was around medical care, because we were in a situation where they'd tried so hard for so long to keep their heads above water, but they were now at the point where the medical insurance for the family was lapsing. So me, my brother, and my sister, if anything happened, there was no going to hospital, because that's the way America is. Or if you do go to hospital, you're now in debt forever. So being British citizens, there was a discussion about them perhaps staying together.
Yeah.
But certainly for now, my mum had to take the kids and go over to England.
So that's very interesting. So it was the financial pressure on the
was
relationship that
financial.
made your mum make that decision.
But
to take you guys away?
I think a lot of divorces and a lot of breakups are
Absolutely.
financial pressure.
I've seen it. I've seen it in a lot of my friends' parents' relationships. I've seen it happen.
If you take married couples where they're both working, they're both trying to juggle jobs, incomes, they have arguments about what to spend the family money on. The guy wants to buy too much beer, the woman wants to buy too many clothes. They fall out all the time. And I just feel like it's not great, but a lot of marriages could be solved by giving them $10 million. Like, a lot of the problems in most families could be solved by saying, stay married, here's $10 million.
Yes.
Just chill out and don't work anymore. So it's one of the reasons that me and Andrew always preach about, financial success and making money and all the things that we always talk about, because we understand that as ugly as it is, I guess, that the world revolves around money in such a way. It's not just the world, it's your relationships, your marriages, your family, the dynamic you have with your kids. It all revolves around money in one way or another, because it can make things a lot better, and money can also make things a lot worse, but being broke is harder than being rich.
Which moves me on to my next question. You moved to England when you were very young.
8.
Did that have a big impact on you as a child? Did it make you feel it? And did you miss America when you first moved to England? How was that move for you?
Moving country when you're a kid is very difficult. And England and America are extremely different countries. So I lived in a country with a forest and nature, and I could run outside and play in the woods. And that was very much my childhood and my lifestyle, I guess, as a 7-year-old, riding bikes around. And then I moved into the middle, just north of Bury Park in Luton.
Marsh Farm?
No. The homeless shelter we lived in was on Studley Road, the same road as the fire
I know
station.
Studley Road. Anyone from Luton will know Studley Road, I'm sure.
It's the fire station road. It's now been demolished and it's a bunch of flats now, but there used to be a house there that was owned by the government. It was like a homeless shelter for homeless families. So there I am in the middle of there. The closest park, I guess, is Wardown Park, but if you go down there, you're going to get stabbed or robbed.
Well, these days, absolutely.
These days. I mean, it still wasn't that great
It wasn't,
25 years ago.
The ice cream store there is still running.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Still there?
it's still going, the same one.
Who goes to Bury Park nowadays, especially with your kids?
Yeah.
But no, I moved country, and it was very difficult for me to readjust to the educational system.
Which is what I'm asking you. You found that part tough? Surely, I mean. So, what was your first primary school in England? Because you must have went primary school.
I went to Icknield Junior School.
Icknield Juniors?
Icknield Juniors, and I was year 5 when I started. So I did 2 years of Icknield Juniors. And then, ironically, because the house that the government put us in after the homeless shelter wasn't in the Icknield catchment area, I had only just made a bunch of new friends. So I was 10 at this point. I've been in England 2 years. I'd only just made a bunch of new friends. And then suddenly everyone's going to the same high school and I have to go to a different one. So I lost all my friends again 2 years
So you
later.
went to Lee Manor from Icknield.
From Icknield.
And that's not normal in the catchment area.
No, it was me and 4 other people. I still remember their names. Lawrence Dakini, Taisha Davis, and Mark Curtin.
I've heard a few stories about you and Mark.
Mark's a good friend of mine. So those are I still to this day, isn't that weird? That all these years later, I remember the only 4 people from Icknield Junior
And you'll
School.
never forget.
And I haven't said the word Lawrence Dakini or Taisha Davis in 14, 15 years. I haven't even heard of them. But I still remember 4 of us from that school got to go to Lee Manor. So yeah, that sucked.
Did you ever deal with a lot of, so being an American kid with an American accent, did you deal with a lot of, not so much bullies, but did you ever have any conflict for being the American kids or?
No.
No?
No one cares if you're American. I think that culturally you're different and you know that you're different.
Yeah.
I think nowadays British kids and American kids are a lot more similar than they were back then. Before the internet, before TV shows mixed the cultures too much. England was England and America was America. No, I didn't really get any trouble for it. If anything, people thought it was cool that I was American.
Yeah, I did think that.
Yeah, so people wanted to talk to me more. But no, I've never in my life had any cases of bullying or anything like that. And I've always been quite headstrong and stood up for myself.
Listen, you've never been scared of a straightener, I'll tell you that much.
I've never been scared of a straightener.
What I will say is, so you went from Icknield to Lee Manor. Lee Manor, quite renowned for being quite a rough school.
The worst school in Luton, which is one of the worst towns for education.
I mean, its Ofsted reports weren't great.
Yeah, I've heard it's doing much better these days.
Do you know what? I think they've had a revamp of the school. It's been renovated and they've got new teachers in. And
they've revamped the entire council estate.
Yeah.
But when I was at the school, it was under a state of what's called special measures. So the government was actively inspecting the school every 4 to 5 days to stop crime and drugs, and all the teachers were just
I remember at the time it was really rough.
Yeah, and they weren't hiring teachers on contracts. They were hiring specialist teachers who were ex-police officers and stuff. Crazy. It was really bad when I went to it. So
crazy. So
shout out to Mr. Snape, turned it around. He's probably dead by now. I don't know. He was the head teacher.
So going on the topic of Lee Manor being quite run down when you went there, and the education wasn't great. How did you and Andrew become so articulate and so knowledgeable?
Well, education is more than what you learn in school. In fact, I believe education is nothing to do with school at all. They're some of the smartest people in the world. I've sat in pubs with people who have knowledge and access to information or information in their brain that blows people's minds, because they live shitty lives. They sit in the park all day and read books and read newspapers and drink at the pub all night. They're still nowhere and they're still nobodies, but they've self-educated. So when people say to me, Tristan, you're uneducated, technically I'm uneducated because I don't have a university degree. I know much more about many more things than almost anyone I know who has a university degree.
But where did that discipline come from? Because obviously your dad was in America,
yeah,
right? Your mum was in England with you guys. She had enough on her hands trying to raise 3 kids by herself in Luton. That in itself's a task. Where did you get the discipline to educate yourself, and make yourself that? Did you read a lot of books? I
did read a lot of books, but it was more out of curiosity than discipline. I could lie and say that when I was a kid, I was focused on learning things and I wanted to know everything. It's not really true. I just, libraries are free. I was bored. There was no source of entertainment in the world.
Yeah.
I remember being at year 5 learning about stupid things like the ancient Greeks. And as an American, I'd never heard of Greece. So I was like, what? Who are the ancient Greeks? I remember, so I'm 9 years old at this point. I had no idea who they were. So I would go to the library and get books out about them and start reading about them and try to educate myself. So when I sit with most people from any walk of life, there's at least a conversational topic I can hold with them. Yeah. But it wasn't about discipline when I was young. It was about curiosity. And then it was about being poor and being broke and having nothing else to do really than to read books. Yeah. But I mean, you see my room now; it's full of books. People don't know how much I read.
I can't say the same for most people that went to Lee Manor at your age.
Yeah, I don't know.
A lot of them.
A lot of them are in jail.
Which is why I asked the question. What made you choose that different path? However, what I will say is, When did you and Andrew decide that you were going to start fighting? You're both renowned fighters. Andrew's a 4-time world champion, as most people know in kickboxing. Yourself, you fought for British and European titles. You know, I went to them fights, which you fought brilliantly in.
Yep. It's
what age did you start fighting and why?
You know Luton, man.
Yeah.
There's nothing to do. And people say, why did you choose kickboxing? Why didn't you choose boxing? Why didn't you choose rugby? Why didn't you choose this? Like, it was simple as I was broke and there was a kickboxing gym in Luton. The best sporting facility in Luton was a kickboxing gym. Sure, there are some good boxing gyms and there's some good other things, but Andrew discovered this kickboxing gym.
How old was Andrew?
16 maybe?
16?
16. He was doing his last year of high school.
And how did you meet Amir? You know, how did you decide, right, I'm going to go storm gym, and, you know, what made you choose
Well,
Amir?
Andrew had been a few times, and Amir had beaten Andrew up quite badly on his first visits. It was back in the old school, you know. Nowadays, you couldn't do that if some kid turned up at your gym.
Amir's ruthless, bro,
beat him up,
and he'll never
but-
change his ways.
Nah, he'll never change.
Amir's not for soft people to go into his gym. That's just not Amir's style.
No, but it was, I think we just found a good affinity with him. We had a good relationship with him. We looked up to him, I guess, like an older brother or a father figure, you know, back in the day. And, you know, he's smart, he's powerful. He fought in that war that I found incredibly interesting. He was just one of those characters I just gravitated.
Amir is a character.
I gravitated towards.
He is a massive character.
And he was here 2 weeks ago. So
guys, if anyone hasn't heard Amir's stories, I can tell you now, you can sit with Amir for an hour and listen to them, and they'll blow you out of the water, because honestly, how is that man not dead? He's unkillable.
Yeah.
You know?
And most people from Eastern Europe watching this will know about the Yugoslavian conflict. So he was one of the Bosnians. So
But he was special forces in Bosnia. He was well known, right?
Indeed, he was. So that was so I gravitated towards Amir, and it became one of those things. What else is there to do? Okay, you finish work. First it was school, but then as I got older, you finish work. Then what do? Go home and do what? Play video games? Jerk off? Like, no.
I know you two boys have got way too much energy.
You go to the kickboxing gym.
Right? Of
You
course.
get beaten up, you get tired, you wake up the next morning, you go to work, you come home from work, what's there to do tonight? Nothing, kickboxing gym. Occasionally go out on a Friday and Saturday night, but what else was there really to do? I feel like, and I'm going to go on a bit of a rant.
No, let's do it.
I feel like the talent pools of athletes, musicians, anything that's moderately impressive they're being diluted and they're vanishing in today's world. So when I was in jail in January, I saw a music video where Jimmy Page, the guitarist from Led Zeppelin, was playing the guitar. And Andrew went, fucking hell, he's good. How did he get so good? I said, I'll tell you how he got so good. Because every boy who was 14 or 15 got a guitar for his birthday.
Yeah.
And millions of them tried to learn how to play. And a few became very, very good. You identified through the use of guitars the most talented guitarists in the world. How many 16-year-old boys get guitar for their birthday nowadays?
None.
What do they get? A PlayStation. What do they get? A Nintendo. Yeah. So boxing, I feel like, is in its, sadly, its last great era, if you call it that.
Yeah.
Because if you think of fighters, great fighters like Floyd Mayweather, Oscar De La Hoya, who spent years in the amateurs fighting for nothing.
Mike Tyson.
On pure sponsorships. Yeah. Hundreds of amateur fights, not making any money, not getting any clout, not getting any glory. For 10 years maybe, but for the first time they ever have a fight that's even on television, the talent was so refined by the sheer number of people participating in the sport, or participating in learning how to sing or dance or play guitar or box or ice skate, that you got super talented people. Now I look around at the Western world and every young man, everyone, 15, 16, out of shape, scrolling on TikTok. That's what they're doing.
Yes.
So what are we going to do? Discover the world's best fucking serial masturbators? Like, where's the talent pools now? You don't have any talent pool to pick any talent from. So I think it's all going downhill. But yeah, I stayed with kickboxing.
Which brings me on to my next question. What age did you and Andrew leave your mum's house and decide that you were going to go and live together?
Well, we lived separately at first because we were very young, and that house was two men of our size living in that house.
Two big guys living in that house.
We're too big for that house.
Yes, right. I can imagine you drove Eileen mad.
Yeah, we drove her insane. So I actually left when I was 15. When I was working at that sandwich shop, you know Peter. I made a friend, a guy from Slovakia named Peter. And he lived in this house where the Eastern Europeans who moved to England, I guess they still do it today, but it was certainly a lot more popular back then, where they would rent one house and everybody would pay the rent share for one room.
So it's like a shared house and you all chipped in to
so
pay the rent to the landlord?
I paid £190 a month, which was affordable at my salary.
And that was at Pret?
Yeah, working at Pret making sandwiches.
So your first ever job was Pret?
Yes, working at the airport making sandwiches.
And what did Andrew do?
Andrew was working in the fishmongers in the market.
I know the fishmongers.
So Andrew's,
famous K. Ashley fishmongers in Luton Market.
Yeah.
Insane.
So Andrew was working at the fishmongers for many years. They need to put up a plaque or something with his face on it behind the counter. I think they should. I feel like the Pret at Luton Airport should have put up a picture of my face as well.
Do you know what? I was there recently before I came here to stay with you guys. I went to Luton Airport in departures, and I went to Pret and I got a sandwich, and I thought, fucking hell.
When you posted that on Twitter, some kid messaged me saying, "Ha, you really worked there. I still work there now."
Yeah.
And I started DMing him, asking like, who did you still know? Because all the people who worked there when I worked there, turns out one of the guys I worked night shift with went on to be the manager. And when that kid first started, that guy was his manager. So this guy had that guy's number.
Wow.
So I got my friend Richard's number off this kid because you posted that on Twitter.
Wow.
So I've reconnected with an old friend I used to make sandwiches with.
So I remember when, I first met you and Andrew. I met Andrew, funny enough, we had a debate on Bebo, and
we were arguing.
We were arguing on Bebo, me and Andrew, on a different social network that a lot of the young men won't know what that is nowadays.
Yeah.
No, me and Andrew met up and we had a fight, and I got my ass handed to me. That's fine. And after that, we actually realised we had a lot in common in terms of our views and our sense of humour. And that's when I met you guys. You lived in a town called Hitchin in an apartment, right?
Indeed, I wasn't doing too badly when you met me. I mean, I wasn't doing great, but. How old was I? So I must have been about, 20?
But there were times when you guys were struggling, right?
Yeah, no, it got worse after I met you.
Yeah.
Hitchin was okay. Then when I was living in Dunstable, it had gotten really bad. So I've had my ups and downs in life. The path to success isn't one big straight graph on its way up.
Which brings me on to my next question. What was the hardest point for you and Andrew in terms of financially?
The hardest point financially, me and Andrew were partners in a company that made television commercials. So it was essentially a phone sales office where everyone would make lots of calls every day to all sorts of different businesses and try to convince them to buy television advertising. Now, television advertising was big and it was popular and everybody wanted to do it. So when we first started the business, that was when you met me.
I remember you were doing telephone sales, is that right?
I had a bit of money. I had a nice flat that I was renting. We had that Porsche Boxster car that was on finance. It was
the Porsche Boxster S, the red one?
Jeez,
that's bringing back the years now.
But the thing is, television advertising, we didn't have any foresight. The internet killed television advertising. And we were still trying to sell these television advertising campaigns. We still had a few clients that were still hanging on. But there was the year when I was living in that flat in Dunstable, when I couldn't afford the electricity.
I remember.
That year, I think for the entire 12-month period, me and Andrew made probably less than $7 or $8 grand total.
Didn't it get to a point where you were using the communal electric from the hallway to run into the flat?
Yeah, so we ran out of electricity. We put an extension wire in the hallway and ran it into the apartment to charge our phones and our computers and stuff. Yeah. And you couldn't close the door because the wire was too thick.
I remember these times because
knives under the pillow.
Andrew and Tristan used to make this dish, and it was called Flavour. And it was the most bland dish you could ever have. And it was made of cheap mince, rice, sweet corn and peas.
And beans,
kidney beans, all thrown into a pot. So it had everything you needed to train and to survive. Yeah. But you used to freeze big pots of that for the week.
But we ate the same thing every day.
Yeah, I remember I used to do it with you.
And that was also the year where I'd go to KFC. Everyone knows that story.
That's right. That's where the KFC story
I'm not going to repeat myself. But it's weird when you become a public figure and you're seen on the internet, people don't understand your life story. So people will say, I'll say like, oh, when I was 21, 22, I used to go to KFC and etc. And the people would find a picture of me and Andrew at 20 and 21 in that old Porsche Boxster we had on a finance agreement and be like, oh, look.
I've still got many pictures.
And they'll be like, oh, look, that's not true because this was 1 year before he said that happened.
Yeah.
There were ups and downs in my life, loads of ups and downs.
Which is why I think it's important for people to know that you weren't always, you didn't always have money. Because people are under this illusion that you always had money. No. And that annoys me because I've seen you guys and I've seen your struggle and I've seen what you had to do to pay your rent.
Before I was 28, I certainly had more hard times than good times.
Absolutely.
But the last few years have been exceptionally easy. Even this one where they send me to jail, it's fine.
Okay, well, which is funny because I know you and Andrew, and I know that you've had the same friends from when I met you guys.
Yeah, right. So Marcel, we got a few good friends.
Surely you guys had a criteria as to who you chose as your friends and who you didn't.
Obviously, I had bad taste. No, I don't think. When some people will meet a girlfriend and they'll be like, this one's the one. And they'll be like, how do you know? And they'll be like, nope, I just know. I don't think you pick friends. I don't think you really analyze people. At an older age, now I have to be more careful who I meet. I certainly do find myself analyzing people. What do they want from me is a big question that I have to ask myself now.
Absolutely.
I'm as wealthy as I am. But back in the day, I don't think that you analyze people on a conscious level. I think it's all subconscious. So I can't actually tell you what the criteria was or what I was thinking at the time or why I hung out with the people who I hung out with. But the only thing that I know I've always looked for in friends and people is loyalty. I know that I just know that because me and Andrew have always had that. So we couldn't have anyone in our group who would betray that kind of trust and concept.
Which I will say, everyone that I know from your group of friends, who are my group of friends too, every single one of them, their loyalty is unmatched.
Of course.
And I will say that, like, no one's ever broke the code.
No, and that's how I've picked them. And I didn't do it on purpose, I guess. But I still have those same old group of friends that stand by me. I think I always will. Unfortunately.
Yeah, well, sorry.
But here you are.
You're stuck now. Yeah. Sorry, bro. So, what was your proudest moment growing up?